come fly. May the southern sun shine on you, warm your heart and help you try. May the western waters cleanse you, washing over all you feel. Northern earth be yours to stand in, ground you so you know what's real. Over all be strength and beauty, food and friends and music fine. Work your love and pleasant duty, love to make your spirit shine. All of these I wish upon you, multiply them 3 times 3. Draw a circle all around you, and forever blessed be.
Welcome to the Sunday service of San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located right here in beautiful Georgetown, Texas. To find out more about our congregation or to stay connected with us, please visit our website, which will be noted at the end of the service. My name is Susan J. Rogers. I am the choir director here. In addition to being a choir director, I have composed music and written books of poetry, including being interviewed about my poetry multiple times at Bookwoman in Austin, Texas, and on Texas Nafas, Austin's public cable television station. Most of my creative work is about the goddess. Today, I will be reading from my 2 books of poetry, Landscapes of the Mind and In the Beginning, an Egg, a Mask, a Woman. Details about my books are at the end of the service. My goal today will be not only to share with you my passion for the goddess, but also to suggest that our ancient connection with the goddess may very well be the key to the survival of our planet. And now, as is our custom, I will light the chalice with these words from my poem, When Enchantment Thins. When enchantment thins into a haze that burns off in the midday sun, there's always someone else involved in breaking the spell, sometimes unwitting, but always brave and true. In reality, it always takes 2, the one deeply enchanted who starts to chafe against the ropes, invisible though they may be, and the other who just happens along, who stops to notice when the pink-gray air clears to brilliant blue, when all lies still around her, around his feet. However it happens, the prince who just shows up beside the sleeping beauty, the woman who notices something special about a frog, and suddenly the powerful curse of the great monarch is broken. As swirls of yellow, pink, green, white, and orange skirt the flat-top mountains, then spiral up to whirl with the fury of a flamenco dancer, clapping, stamping, fanning, twirling, singing in guttural beauty and pain, pressing into the strings of an old guitar, forcing me to confront all I am leaving behind. But, my children, when enchantment ends and the fairy tale is no more, The Syrian women will throw off their black hijabs as they run across the desert sand, delivered from evil by Kurdish women with long hair and rifles, to whom they bow down and say, "You are our God." Then mountains will recede into steep watersheds, sand give way to peat moss, and rivers swell, pouring downhill into streams of silt-filled water, the grass soaked underneath what is now a clear pool, where white herons come to wade, feeding on frogs and fish, invisible until now. Then the frogs all slip back into clear water as they remind us once again of the goddess and rebirth. As enchantment ends and the ordinary emerges, it might just take us back to the beginning of time. Our UU faith provides a sanctuary for people of all religious traditions, including those with no religious faith. Instead of religious beliefs, we are guided by a set of principles, one of which is respect for the interdependent web of life of which we are a part. In ancient times, this was known as the goddess, and included respect for the land that surrounds and sustains us. In earth-centered traditions today, such as Native American traditions, it is known as Mother Earth. Native Americans believe that Mother Earth is not simply someone's property, but a source of spiritual power that requires right relation to the land, including treating the earth as a living, spiritual being. In her book, The Dinner Party, Judy Chicago says, "In the beginning, the feminine principle was seen as the fundamental cosmic force. All ancient people believe that the world was created by a female deity." Marija Gimbutas, in her book, The Language of the Goddess, has uncovered archaeological evidence that the goddess-worshipping cultures of prehistoric Europe produced communities that were peaceful, egalitarian, and focused on art. This means that men and women were treated equally, there was no hierarchy, there is no evidence of war, people produced art, and everyone also believed in the goddess. Could there be a connection? A lot has changed since then, but the shadow of the goddess remains, from White Buffalo Calf Woman and Corn Mother to Our Lady of Fatima and Virgin de Guadalupe. There are also syncretized or blended religions, such as Santa Barbara from Catholicism, who is also Shango, a warrior god or goddess originally from West Africa. Sometimes she has been a cultural symbol, such as Amaterasu, the sun goddess of the Shinto religion of Japan. Her symbol, a red ball on a white background, is still on the Japanese flag. Sometimes she was subsumed into a male deity. Cardea, the subject of my song Spiral Time, later became Janus, and Cardea was demoted to a deity who could only frighten witches away from the nursery door. The witches, of course, were the original midwives and healers of the goddess-worshipping cultures of pre-Christian Europe. Another example is Allah of Islam, who was originally Allat, the youngest of a Middle Eastern triple goddess, who was represented by the crescent moon, still an important symbol of Islamic culture. During cultural clashes with the newer religions, the goddess was sometimes allowed to exist only as a powerless victim or an enraged monster, a distorted version of her former self. These truncated goddesses included Lilith, Persephone, and Medusa. Judy Chicago and others believe that the fate of the goddess mirrors the respect or lack thereof that women have in that culture. Cultures where the goddess is still intact include the goddess Tara of India and Tibet. Her story illustrates the transformation of the ancient goddess. She is the Tibetan goddess of wisdom and compassion. She has 21 aspects, from swift protection to radiant health, from irresistible truth to joy and laughter. She is as multifaceted as every woman is, as every human being is, but also in a way to which we all can aspire. Originally, she was an ancient Hindu goddess whose name meant star. Tara was associated with Mother Earth and still is in some cultures, such as Ireland. Now, she has been incorporated into Tibetan Buddhism as a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is an enlightened being who is allowed to enter nirvana but chooses to continue to be reincarnated in human form until all beings are free from suffering. Tara was told by her male peers to request to be reborn as a man so she could achieve a higher state. In response, she vowed to always return as a woman. Nevertheless, the Dalai Lama also believes himself to be a reincarnation of Tara. There's another story of how she was born out of the tears of Avalokitesvara, the god of compassion, who thought he had saved all beings from suffering one day, and he went soundly to sleep that night, only to awaken the next day to find there was a whole new group of suffering beings. In despair, he cried until Tara emerged from his tears, vowing to come right away when she was called, thus her title of Swift Protection. I love these full goddesses of our ancestors. In fact, I believe that our ancestors left clues to the existence of these powerful, ancient, spiritually whole goddesses. How could they not? She was so vital to them. Today, I will show you where she has been hiding in plain sight among the stories we thought we knew, stories we still repeat to our children. Hold on to your seats for a whirlwind ride through the supercharged language of poetry as we travel across cultures to reimagine history and ultimately transform it. Tara's mantra is Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Soha. All that exists, Divine Mother, remover of fear, bestower of good fortune, so be it and so it is. May all of us, women, men, boys, and girls, stand proudly in the reflection of the divine. The doctrine of this church is love, the quest of truth and sacrament, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and serve humanity in fellowship. Peace, freedom, and fellowship, to the end that all the souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant, thus do we covenant with each other, with each When a culture loses its memory of the goddess, it has a profound effect on everyone, especially on women, as shown in the following poems. The first poem is called When Poetry Speaks. When poetry speaks, breathing the steaming air, humming over the white noise of a humidifier, the orange glow of the Himalayan rock salt, swirling overtones of color chords from my touch on the piano today. I drew the blank rune for the past, taunting me with the unknown, wait and see, kindly veiling the future as I lay back in the cut of today's endurance. Maybe a smile will drip down my shoulders where I have been steeled against a sadness I can't forget. Perhaps the past is mysterious, its effects kaleidoscopic. Then I will shake its barrel today until new facets form butterfly patterns I will shape into words. Because sometimes poetry speaks what the heart hides in the heavy curtains of life's daily walk across the stage. Breathing the steaming air as an orange glow hums over white noise, the past reshapes everything now and forever. The next poem is called Like Moss. What if human beings have distributed intelligence like moss, who prosper or perish together, each drop of dew shared by all as they shine from the eye of the cave at sunset? What if it is essential to hear the wisdom in each of us, like jigsaw pieces connecting one by one until we see the whole image illuminate our collective unconscious, a vision intact from the beginning of time? What if certain straight white men stopped talking long enough for everyone else to be heard? Because when the privileged few finally have the courage to simply be one of many, the solution to all our problems will pour through the cracks of the false narratives we were told as children, tales of subordination we ate as our daily broth. Now we choose the food of creativity as dancers leap, musicians strum, poets speak, and artists delight the eye in truth-telling patterns we have long awaited, and now hear in multiple tongues, on the lips of our neighbors, co-workers, strangers from around the world, all participating. Glory be in the magnificent, most welcome divine plan. Everyone rolling up their sleeves and getting to work on this most wondrous future for our biosphere. The next poem's called Who's to Judge? Who's to judge? The man in the pulpit said that loving Baltimore is like loving a homely girl, and then laughed. But who set him up as the judge of beauty and women? How many straight men truly love women? Among animals, heterosexually speaking, it is the female who judges the male, and he must spend countless hours defeating rivals, courting her, proving his worth. Perhaps lesbians should be the judge of beauty, because they love all women fiercely, as tribe, family, lover. They understand no woman on the planet is truly homely. They're all beautiful in their own way, as all flowers are beautiful. The next poem is called Rebuilding the Matriarchy. Rebuilding the Matriarchy. No one leaves the womb, turns around and disrespects everyone who looks like his mother. There must be some lie so enchanting he forgets who held him in her belly and suckled him at her breast. The native water protectors told us your men are violent because you destroyed the matriarchy. Until you resolve this, you have nothing to offer. They said it burned down during the Inquisition, where in one town in Alsace-Lorraine, all the women were killed. Only a 10-year-old girl survived. How did she guide her daughters to maneuver in this new world? Did she warn them men are violent? Did she teach them to be meek? Did she tell them all the mother protectors are gone, or have forgotten their duty is not to themselves, but to go out of their way for others, stamping out poverty, war, and ignorance, preventing illness and accidents, removing all barriers to a nurturing world? Examples of the complete goddess that still exists today include Amaterasu, the sun goddess symbolized on the Japanese flag. Her story is also the story of how winter came into the world. This next poem, Revelry, is part of my song cycle for soprano and piano called Amaterasu, Song of the Sun. It was performed at the University of New Mexico. We pick up the story after the storm god Susanoo has wreaked havoc on the beautiful palace of the sun. There has been a whirlwind of destruction, including a horse being thrown through the roof of the sacred hall of creativity, killing one of the weavers, her dear friend. She is so distraught that she hides in a cave and will not come out. Thus the first winter comes upon the world. There are 800 gods and goddesses who huddle together to discuss the problem of the earth's plants and animals starving, freezing from lack of sunlight. But it is Uzume, the mirth goddess, who comes up with a plan. This is Uzume talking. Revelry. Because it was dark and cold, because we were afraid of this first winter, because the plants were frozen, the animals desperate, no sunlight, no food, because depression was beginning to warp our judgments, the dark nights stretching longer and longer, while the others stood on the dead river bed and argued about reflection and the soul, I remembered what she said to me. You are the terrible female of heaven, inspired, daring, full of laughter, and so I was the terrible one in that delicate hour. I don't remember all of what happened next. I do remember how carefully I dressed, how some of what I needed lay buried under several feet of snow, how the snow kept coming and was becoming a blizzard. That's why I built a fire with the most potent herbs, then turned over a washtub. I stamped impatiently on it until I had everyone's attention. Then I called down my power and moved to the rhythm of the earth. I tore off my blouse, pulled up my skirt. I laughed, breathing deeply. Drunk with the smoke, I laughed at our worries, this huge joke, a moment out of time. Then my antics became ever more terribly funny. I kept reaching for a way out until finally we were all there, laughing hysterically, warm finally, the snow no longer falling. We barely noticed. But a crack of sunlight drew my attention because she, whom I had almost forgotten, was peeking out of a small opening in the cave, peeking out of the cave. Here are a couple of poems about Tara, the Tibetan goddess of wisdom and compassion. The first one's called Invocation to Tara. The day I called on you, Tara, in the waiting room, I felt your hand in mine. Be still, my soul. I felt your mother's love. Be calm, my heart. Then my thoughts were yours, and when the moment came, I knew exactly what to do. Necklaces brushing your heart, the colors of Diné, Catholic, and Tibetan prayer beads became the colors and sounds of people saying prayers, offering compassion and wisdom in their mother tongues, a symphony of prayer. I saw you levitating until you were at the ceiling, near the stained glass window of the church, seated in the lotus position, meditating, small enough to rest in the palm of my hand. Your smile was so deep from within, it radiated a powerful joy back out, bursting over everyone in a rainbow, bright light of compassion, Holy Spirit, bright jewel of wisdom, Mother of Peace. Shooting lightning bolts more powerful than any god, you destroy our delusions. The world sees an old woman herding goats. I see you, Tara, with demons bowing low, subdued by your power. As our fears evaporate, I move into your golden spiral. I am Tara, and she is I. With humbleness and gratitude, I touch my deepest self. So I decided to invite Tara into the modern world in this next poem. It's called Tara for Anger. 1. Riding on a crocodile, Tara frowns at the boy wrapped in a hoodie, curled head to knee in a ball of anger. To Tare, he says, as if in a dream. She shouts at him until he turns his head. Then the boy's delusions, reflected in the sharp words he always hurls at others, the explosion of anger from them it always elicits. how he always feels so wronged when anger is thrown back at him, now are gone. He is dazed and does not remember how his thoughts slid back into the ocean like the tide. 2. Her hair standing on end, Tara hears the Anglo woman call the Mexican waiter boy. The waiter takes the order, then whirls around in a streak of white-hot light. He sees nothing but his murderous thoughts, but something inside him from his childhood starts to chant tray and pay. Then he sees Tara offering him a cup of cold water. He drinks it, and they walk together down the cool, dark streets until his arms and legs stop shaking. Then she goes back to the restaurant to deal with the Anglo woman. 3. The graduate student felt her mind melt, so she signed herself into the hospital. But when her insurance ran out and they told her they were going to transfer her to the state hospital, she took a sheet and started tying knots. She thought just for a second of Tara, but her despair was too strong and her mind too soft. She shrugged and continued tying knots. Then Tara rushed at her, wearing skulls that rattled and bounced at crazed angles. Tara shot red thunderbolts at her from her hands and feet. Terrified, the student dropped her train of thought. As her heart pounded, she saw her last scrap of hope fly up. She caught it and squeezed hard. Now Tara teaches her lesson 1. How to meditate for 1 second in 24 hours in an uncluttered mind she forgot she ever knew. And tomorrow, lesson 2. So in this poem, I'm going to read a couple of notes in the back. Tutare means removes fears. Tray and pay means destroys unwholesome plans. The goddess showed up in a surprise ending to this next poem. And why not? After all, it was a New Zealand holy man that I saw on TV. He once said, "It's up to women to define the goddess and bring her back into the world." This is called In the Desired Direction. In the desired direction. I seek the blue landing lights in this soft night. I seek the bright landing lights along the runways of my heart. Take me all the way home tonight. Coming in for landing, I await your instructions to shape my descent. Close to arrays of buzzing cars along the anthill highways, I seek the warnings waved by the hands of men who risk their lives to bring this ship safely down. I have been these men, and they have been me. Tell me what direction to lean toward. I seek the source, the power in a moment of danger, to change a lifetime of patterns into a new destiny. Whisper to me while 1,000 waves of wind wash onto my bow. How do I pick a direction between ley lines and life force, between desires that ebb and flow, between all other life forms spinning their webs, shooting out words of pain and ecstasy, and me? I seek music in the stars and the blanket of dark, the source of electricity and the purple flash of light. I seek graceful transformation when I land on this warm night, into the woman who pours water on the sun-drenched plants in birth, who flower and labor secure in her touch. This next poem touches on the ancient European goddess that Marija Gimbutas uncovered. It's also dedicated to the ancient queen of Babylon, named Semiramis, who lived where Syria is today. Dedicated to Semiramis. Remember if you dare, because the stories they tell us today are all wrong. This is why we feel uneasy. Symbols on restroom doors, for example, the symbol for woman was never a triangle and certainly not a dress, something both men and women wore in ancient times, until the queen of Babylon, inspecting her engineering feat, aqueducts in the desert, decided she would be more comfortable in pants, which she designed so she could ride her camel as she watched her construction workers labor under the Syrian sun. The symbol for woman is an inverted triangle, the base of it with a slit, to show where we all come from and where our souls will return. when our bodies recede to bone. Then we will see the world as nothing but a reflection pool, and even the goddess will mirror our bodies at the hour of our death. She too will be rendered in bone, arms folded across her chest, breast shrunk, body stiff, but still the inverted triangle, the womb, will invite us back to the river Styx, primordial blood, original nourishment, the sacred river inside her, which we will follow again. From the beginning, is now and ever shall be, the dearly departed set course on her wide and rolling river to their land of respite, to Avalon, place of magic and rebirth. Remember this story. Remember if you dare. I never cared for the gods and goddesses of ancient Greece and Rome that I learned about as a child. I was looking for something greater than myself, an image to admire, and I could not find it there. Little did I know then that there was a more ancient and more spiritually whole goddess that the Greeks worshipped. Here is a hymn preserved during the time of Homer, probably from a more ancient time, that a modern composer, Frederick Jeffsky, set to percussion music. I performed it at Chicago State University as part of my senior recital. It's called To the Earth. To the earth, mother of all, I will sing the well-established, the oldest, who nourishes on her surface everything that lives. Those things that walk upon the holy ground, and those that swim in the sea, and those that fly, all these are nourished by your abundance. It is thanks to you if we humans have healthy children and rich harvests. Great Earth, you have the power to give life and to take it away from creatures that must die. Happy are the ones whom you honor with your kindness and gifts. What they have built will not vanish. Their fields are fertile, their herds prosper, and their houses are full of good things. Their cities are governed with just laws, their women are beautiful. Good fortune and wealth follow them, their children are radiant with the joy of youth. The young women play. The young women play in the flowery meadows, dancing with happiness in their hearts. Holy Earth, undying Spirit, so it is with those whom you honor. So after reading that poem, I was inspired to write this next one. Origin of the Goddess. Beneath the waves of the ocean, amphibians crawled on new legs out of the water onto shore, and their grandchildren stood on their own 2 feet. But some of them were homesick and fused their hind legs into mermen and maids, returned to the waves, ate plankton, became dolphins or whales, who breached the water and blew a blessing to their cousins still on the land. The cousins who climbed trees, then walked on the ground, painted caves, then created the first pottery, a pitcher with 2 slits for eyes, another for the mouth, and a quick L for the nose. But the M they drew below the face was still the waves of the ocean and the wavelets of the womb, the memory from which the goddess was born. And the more they prayed, the more she stayed, teaching them the rituals of birth and death, to honor all those who walk, those who fly, those who swim, those rooted in the ground, teaching them the way of peace and creativity, as they call out to each other, good day, good luck, calling on Mother Nature as she calls on us, to nurture, protect, and celebrate the source of life, what nourishes life, the sacred springs, rivers, oceans, mother's milk, the goddess abundance. Recently, an ancient cart used for religious purposes was found in England. It was buried in a peat bog, perfectly preserved. The cart was for a ceremony in honor of the ancient goddess Nerthus, who was worshipped from Syria to the British Isles. This one's called Little Cart of Avondale, 6000 BCE. Little Cart of Avondale, 6000 BCE. Mist rises off the ancient river. New green clover emerges from patches of wet brown earth. A delicate wooden cart emerges from a grove of trees, Celtic swirls carved on its sides. The Holy of Holies, a traveling tabernacle, holds the statue of Our Lady hidden by a white veil. Alongside the cart walks a holy man devoted to her. When she arrives, we stop everything and flock to the cart, like the black and white ducks at the River Avon flock to us, seeking food. After the healings, after the blessing, after the feast and celebration, we forget discord. We put away all metal, all weapons, and are at peace. Afterward, the delicate cart rocks side to side as the holy man leads it downhill. The mist has finally burned off, and the sun is high. Ravens stand calmly on the river bank as cranes and ducks swoop across the surface of the living water. Here are some stories that I thought I knew, but I believe now that the original stories contain remnants of the goddess. This is called Skull and Crossbones. Skull and Crossbones. When the hunters returned and the meat is carved to the bone, already prepared for the spit or salted for later, one by one the hunters bring the clean skull and upper arm bones to the priestess to set on the altar. Then the mighty hunter lays down his prowess and asks the animal to forgive him. The priestess gauges his balance, allows him to continue until he has said everything in his heart. How it feels to take the life of a relative, how to remain a protector of life afterward. Then she prays with him for the spirit of the animal to live on, as they imagine many calves nursing at their mothers in the spring. This next one's called Daughters of the Great Sal. And you may recognize this story from stories you heard as a child. Daughters of the Great Sal. Long ago, she grew old, wore her wisdom hairs without fear, and fought the foreign influence of this new church, known to the people as the Wolf, who whined at the door, crying for their conversion from the sacred ways, the teachings of their ancestors. Little pig, let me come in. She shouted, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Then the church priests huffed and puffed with their bad words, maligning the old ways, but that did not attract followers. So they destroyed the thatched cottages and later the newly built wooden homes, in a whirlwind of flames and fury toward the treasured elder women, known as herbalists, midwives, and seers. Those who survived the burning times took refuge in homes made of brick, created by the New Mason Society, a group of men with half a memory to the mothers they protected and half a mind to form a future brotherhood of well-connected men. Nevertheless, we still tell this story to our children. And this is called the original story of Eve. So the original story of Adam and Eve starts with a story that came from Persia. Original story of Eve. She who creates life, mother of all, set the broken rib of Adam, then breathed upon him and made him whole. One of 8 healers sent by the Queen of Heaven, goddess of paradise, who oversees all creatures, all plants, finally took pity on him, sending Eve and 7 others as he lay dying, wounded in 8 places, including his rib, for his refusal to obey her single command, not to eat the 8 water lilies of paradise. This next poem is in a similar vein. It's called Jack and the Beanstalk. The old woman who is merely Jack's mother is really the Kalik, known from ancient times for her magic cow and spiraling beanstalk. She controls the lean half of the year, between Halloween and May Day Eve. With her powerful staff, she rearranges the rocky landscape and creates rainstorms, hail, sleet, blizzards, and on the coldest days, the sunniest of blue skies. She receives the dead, wraps their bones in hide to await rebirth, under her magical incantation, the miracle of bones. From deep within the fairy world, where she lives at the base of a well, next to an apple tree, baking bread. She flies across the land on long winter nights during the 12 days after solstice and bestows gifts, not only apples and bread, but also seeds, the animals and plants for spring. She provides abundance to those who follow her path, but punishes unkindness, selfishness, and greed. There never was a giant in the sky, no one to mock the ancient knowledge of poetry, prophecy, and incantation. No loud male voice from the heavens to strike terror in those below, requiring a tender young boy to steal back treasure and defend humanity. Instead, the old woman still tends her cow and plants her beans as she always has. The tendrils still show us the spiral path to the goddess, who prepares blessings from her sacred underworld all the way to her weather-whipped skies. Here are some more examples of where the goddess is hidden in plain sight, all the way from the Bible to our holiday traditions. This is Genesis 17, verse 1. Proud woman speaks her mind, does not wait to appease or flatten into consensus, takes the space she needs, legs apart like a warrior, feet solid on the ground, takes up the sonic space too, says what she has to say without the words, maybe, I think so, perhaps. Uses strong words like a spear to state her plan, clarify her objection to what women have had to put up with, reveals the silent history, names the struggle, uplifts and enriches our minds, flings courage into us to finally heal the trauma of generations who have walked this path before her. Not one to cast away a single soul, she grabs hold of those who would harm, cancels out their whirling instability, and we, trusting in her, grab hold too, as all fear, all shame dissolves, and the people are made whole. Each one as rare and precious as the next. As our vision clears, we are at peace, in the shadow of the breast of Our Lady of the Mountain, and the goddess speaks, walk before me and be blameless. The next poem is called El Shaddai. So Shad from Shaddai means breast. And the translation in the Bible for El Shaddai is God Almighty, but the original is El Shaddai, the breast of God, or the goddess. El Shaddai. From Holy Scripture, the priests told us meant God Almighty. They lied. It means the breast of God, the bosom of our original mother, El Shaddai, who nourishes all that lives, from redwoods to bamboo and cacti, from dragonflies to jaguars, from forest to desert to ocean, paps of Ainu, grand Tetons, Mother Nature, from the shrinking of Asherah into Eve and Lady Madonna, she tried to tell us El Shaddai. As we systematically remove the mountaintops, seeking coal under her scapula, drilling for oil under her sacred spring, El Shaddai. As we choose fertilizer for one plant and shoot carcinogens at the other, testing atomic bombs in the Marshall Islands, now sinking into the warming ocean, fracking our way through man camps, raping and killing women and girls, El Shaddai. As we crack the tender crust of Oklahoma, she warns us with monster hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, drought, inferno fires, and the melting of our precious ice caps. But we are silent, as lies and hatred rip through the fabric of humanity. El Shaddai. Turn around, we beg you, turn us around. Hold us hard and long until we remember that the heartbeat of sister and brother must align with the pulse of our mother, El Shaddai. The next is called Her Words, Hidden in the Good Book. So I believe that when the old religions turned to the new, became the new, that there were scribes that tried to hold on to some of the old stories and the old knowledge and wisdom, and I believe it's hidden there in the good book. In Isaiah 2, verses 3 to 4, in Psalms 98, verse 4, and in Psalms 133, verse 3. She is the Stone Age goddess Nerthus, worshipped from England to Syria, also called Sibyl and Mother Nature. She is Earth's bounty and mother of all the gods thereafter. She travels from her home, a sacred grove on an island, all the way to our mountain village. When she arrives, all the iron is put away. Iron Age man lays down his arms. There is no more fighting, and no one goes to war. She will teach us her ways. We will walk in her path, lifting up widows, orphans, and the disabled, so their hearts will be at ease and they will know peace. She shall judge between the nations and rebuke many people. When she first arrived that night, as a meteor shower, we stood together in meditation, in awe, in silent prayer. We found the largest black stone and set it inside a wooden cart, and covered the windows with white curtains. We decorated the delicate cart with intricate swirls, weaving the web of our interconnected souls with the energy we call weird. Others call it chi. We yoked 2 heifers to the cart. Now, every year, a man she has anointed walks beside the cart, a man devoted to her in the path of peace. When she arrives, arguments cease, and there is a festival for days. We make a joyful noise to her. All the earth makes a loud noise, rejoicing, singing praises. We play cymbals, drums, ram horns, singing open-throated as the young people take turns leaping over the horns of a bull. Then we collect all the iron. We beat our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks. Nations will no longer lift up sword against nation. Neither will they study war anymore, because she is in our midst. At dawn, O Lady of the Mountain, your blessings flow down the slope, and all taste you on their lips like morning dew. The next poem is called On Halloween. On Halloween, the tinkling bells announce not Santa Claus, but the mistress of the night. The milk and cookies left out are not for St. Nick, but for the queen of the fairies, who flies through the ancient keyhole along with her retinue to imbibe the offering, who eat their fill without decreasing the abundance of the household, exhausted from gathering the final harvest of acorns, squash, onions, and garlic. Then scatter blessings like forgotten spring petals on those within, and leave the way they came. And these last are just a couple of final poems with images of the goddess in various guises, including in her original form, Mother Nature. This first one's for my nephew, Colin McAllister. For Peter Colin McAllister, 1984 to 2019. The giant rocks are the stones the Cailleach shook from her apron when she was tired of carrying them, she said to her nephew, as she lay his fevered head against the cool stone. Then her brother wept to see his son, after so many years in the East, now slip beyond space and time. and climb the sheer face of the cliff where no one can cling except a white crane and a tenacious tendril of orange flowers. Somewhere the old woman stamps her foot and a valley appears. She settles green around the calm water, and there her nephew flies shouting, then floats talking, then rests silent in the arms of Kuan Yin. His first child too soon loosed from this earth, who never will return from Singapore. And the last poem I'm going to read to you in this section is called Karate, Lesson 1. When a scream would tear your muscles from their hinges, and grief gnaws at the space between your breasts, when memories are carcasses trailing your ankles by thin strings, when tomorrow is a duty, today is exhaustion, and yesterday is still too fearsome to contemplate, when you are finally alone and your allies are depleted, when beauty no longer beats her wings in your throat, when the tall grasses of your heart fear the sickle of your thoughts and the flames in your hands, then is the time to do one move slowly over and over again, one strike, one kick, one kiai, with one teacher, then another, then the first again, and next week the same thing, as if it mattered at what angle this knife hand strike touches an imaginary opponent. Do it over and over again until it does matter, and you finally see the sun throw off her glorious coat of midnight blue. In the tender green and pink of morning, notice the dying clam, attract the diving gull, and know from this day on, both are equal in your gaze. Now I will extinguish the chalice with these words from the title poem of my book, In the Beginning, an Egg, a Mask, a Woman. Oval, tap, tap on the counter. Tap it, not too hard, but firm. Pop, sizzle, congeal into white. Satisfy our hunger, mother. The white oval face of the oldest goddess, bird woman. Her beak, the crease down the center of her mask. The Greeks wanted us to remember this, showed us at the beginning of their Olympics. The one who was older than Athena, more ensconced in nature than Artemis, bird woman flew across the stage. But she was once small and voluptuous, rare and precious, like you, young woman. Back then everyone honored you, held you in the palm of their hands. Men, women, boys, and girls, praying for nourishment, for protection, all of us trusting in you, in a woman who looks just like you, your hips, breasts, and thighs, and mine, before our bodies sold everything to everyone, when women were the original carvers of women, when they, she, and I made this pocket-sized goddess and placed it in your hands. I have one last story for you. In 2002, Chicago State University Choir was rehearsing my song, Spiral Time. One of the choir members asked the Moody Bible Institute if they wanted to perform my song. They said yes, but only if they could change the pronoun she to he. They were going to give Spiral Time worldwide recognition, but only if I denied the existence of the goddess. I said no. Please join me in refusing to deny the existence of the goddess, because she's right here. She is the interdependent web of life of which we are a part. She is, if nothing else, our beloved Mother Earth. Once we think of the earth as our mother, we will find the courage, the strength to do right by her. Thank you for the privilege of being with you today. Now to close, uncensored,